Hello again. This is a video from Order Systems to show you how to set up a MRA-664. The setup is all done using the user interfaces that you use to use the system on a general basis. They are apps from iOS or Android touchscreens, or using the 4-inch or 7-inch dedicated touchscreen that SpeakerCraft provide. So there's no special software or anything like that that you use for installing and configuring the system. You basically go to the user interface and you press and hold on the SpeakerCraft icon at the top of the page, and then it leaves you with this keypad where you can enter a code which will get you into the installer menu, which I'll do. Okay, so I entered the code and now I'm into the installation setup menu, and it's all wizard based. I have a number of items here excuse me, which I work from the top down. And as I work through them, I get ticks showing me that I've done these things. So starting off, I configure chassis. I can set it up so that the power is on constantly or audio sensed, and I'd be inclined to use constant power. And you just click through on the right arrow your IP settings. So you can leave it on DHCP. You don't need a static IP address unless you're using the upward looking interface for a control system, in which case you'd want to put it on a static IP address, because the control system would need to make sure it's always in the same place. But unless you're using a third-party control system to control it, you don't need a static IP. You can leave it on DHCP. This is where I'd add a second chassis, because it's 6 sources to 6 zones. If I want 12 zones, then I add a second chassis, and that's where I'd do that there. As you hopefully have learned from the first video in this series, the system can also control your surround sound amp. And this is where you'd add your surround sound amp in for the surround sound zone. We can control any IP-based, IP controllable amp. So they're all in the list there. If you click on add, and it's a list for Yamaha and Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Marantz, all the main brands are in there. Type in its IP address, and you've done configuring the chassis. Next, you go into configure sources. This is where you can add your sources, and you can see I've already added a skybox, and that's on IR port number 1. And I've got a Blu-ray player from Integra. I've got a request media player, and these are sending infrared out of the handheld remote. And I've got a Panasonic TV, and I've got a Sonos. You know, when you're adding devices, you just click add, you select if it's IP or it's IR, and select which IR port it's connected to, and then select what it is. It might be a CD player, and you might select the model, of which there are many models here, and then you can then select your device, and at that point you can actually then test the selection by making sure the buttons work from the various options, and whether you want to send a single pulse or multiple pulses to make sure that function works. So here, just adding sources to the system that the system knows it needs to be able to talk to somehow or another. Then you assign the sources to the actual inputs. So on here I've only got the Skybox connected to source 1, and a Sonos Connect into source number 2. So I've got more sources in the system than I actually have connected to it, which that will become apparent why in a moment. And I can mess around with the dB levels as well, adjusting the gain just in case they're different line level audios. You don't want things having suddenly different large volumes as you switch between sources, so you can tune it nicely here. Now, the other sources you saw earlier, I did it deliberately this way just to show the power of this system. Basically, I've got 2 sources that are not connected directly to the MRA. They're connected to the Integra surround sound amplifier. So the home theater amplifier has got these sources plugged into these inputs, because remember, the MRA's got enough control capability to control the surround sound zone using the handheld remote control. So that's why I've got more sources, because I wanted to be able to add them here, you see. I can add favorite icons, and obviously it's geographics. You choose your country, and then you've got all these favorites that you can that are all pre-done in the system, and you can all the graphics, the icons are there for your country of choice, and you can see I'm using BBC One and BBC Two, and you just basically punch in the channel number that the favourite will activate, and then when you use that favourite, depending on a Sky box or a Virgin Media box, then it'll punch out those IR codes for you. So I've done my chassis and sources, zones. On this screen really I'm just naming my zones, and as you can see I'm kind of naming them based on the speakers we have that they're driving in our demo room, but you'd probably name them more conventionally: kitchen, dining room and lounge and things like that. I've got lots and lots of capabilities here with tuning the bass and treble and loudness and power on behavior and all sorts of parameters. Max, I can set them, if it's a kid's room or something, I might actually limit how loud they can play it, and things like that. And whether you can have whole house mode and paging capabilities, and what the paging volume is. So now I've done the first three sections. User interfaces. This is basically auto-populated based on the user interfaces that have connected to the system. I've got a 7-inch touchscreen. I've got my the Windows PC at some point is connected to it, and my iPhone and my Microsoft Surface PC, and it's all auto-detected them. If I want, I can click on here and I can select a zone. Now all of these are set to none. And that means that when that user interface launches, you'll be presented with all the zones, and you can choose what room you're in. If you were to lock or specify a zone, then when you launch the interface, it'll assume you're in that zone because it's for that zone, and you have to back out to get back to the whole house mode. So it's just really a usability thing to make it quicker and easier to use. Your language selection is important. So now I've gone through the first 4 topics. The 5th one is configuring the home theatre TV. So this is setting up what the actual TV is, and the actual handheld remote squirts out infrared as well. So I'm using the IR emitter on the home theatre TV, and I would only have one of those, and I can add that and again the database is vast for pretty well every single. Doesn't have to be the IR emitter off of the handheld remote. It could be an IR emitter plugged into the chassis on one of the IR outputs. And here I'm setting up the power on situation here. So when I'm selecting these things, what am I doing? Do I turn if I select the Blu-ray player, I'm probably going to want to turn the TV on and put the TV on the right input by selecting these items here. So I'll turn the TV on and make sure I put it on the correct input. So now that will happen automatically for me from the hard button remote when I choose that source. So I've done all of my items in the wizard. The last item here is the keypad. There is a little 5-button hard button keypad that you can fit in the wall, where you've got favourites 1, 2, 3 and 4, and off and volume up, down. So you've got a little keypad there. I haven't got one connected, so it's not offering me that. If there was one connected, basically I'll be specifying what it does and what zone it's associated with. And then when I'm done, I can just click on the SpeakerCraft icon, and then I'm back to the user interface in normal mode, and I'm able to use the user interface to allocate select my content and play whatever music I want to play. Well, hopefully you found that useful. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions or you need to ask, then let us know. You can contact us at www.aldersystems.co.uk. Thanks for listening.